Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about choosing your player character's fate and a needed change in the Dungeons and Dragons current rules, which we have the opportunity to put into in the 2024 Cool Rulebooks. And this change comes specifically from Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade. So I've been getting prepped for Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny. I'm really excited about this film, and I'm also I'm really excited about what this film achieves. Right, the idea that we now have 5 Indiana Jones movies is huge. It puts this series into a bracket that other series just don't belong in, and it really is a major achievement outside of superhero movies. Is extremely rare to see something go over a trilogy. And actually, it's pretty rare to see trilogies nowadays. It's not easy to get to a trilogy nowadays, especially on a blockbuster scale. Blockbuster trilogies are pretty rare. And so this is really a major turn, right? So what is the change that prompts it? It comes, of course, from the narrative. So let's look at what happens in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So at the end, Indiana Jones gets the Grail and brings it back out to his father, and they're in this holy space where the Grail's being kept. And this Grail has been defended for probably 300 or 400 years, maybe a millennium, right? Actually, when were the Knights of Templar? Yeah, I think like a millennium. I think this thing was protected there for literally an entire millennium, which that's pretty astounding, right? So yeah, that is very, very major. And so basically, Indiana Jones goes in. He finds this Knight of the Templar, and the Knight of the Templar is there, right? So the Knight of the Templar is there and is protecting the Grail. Indy chooses wisely and figures out which Grail is needed, and then brings water out, and actually brings the Grail out and heals his father with it, right? And at that point, essentially, of course, the Nazis are trying to get the Grail, and this Herr Fraulein is essentially a female Nazi agent, decides to take the Grail beyond the seal, right? And which they were warned not to do by the Knight of the Templar who was guarding the Grail, right? So you have this situation where they have the Grail, and the Grail cannot leave this sacred place; it has to remain. And so at this point, the whole place is coming down. Indy knows this. His father is now healed, right? But he's only healed from his mortal wound. It did not restore. It did not give him eternal life, right? Well, actually, no. That's interesting. Did it give? No. We know it didn't give him eternal life because we know Henry Jones Sr. dies. We know this from Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which is a fantastic movie, which really tells a pretty amazing story, in my opinion. And honestly, I am revising my opinion. I actually think that Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull is the most wrongly reviewed film in all of history. Right? Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is art that is so good you don't review it reviews you, right? And so, like, if you're like, oh, I think Indiana Jones and the Kingdom Skull is not a good movie, you have to completely reshape your. So one, I think generally you don't know anything about art. I know there's an exception to this because someone I know who was very brilliant doesn't like the film, but they need to reevaluate their entire relationship with art. I think, and also their relationship with being told what to like and what not to like. I don't think any thinking person can watch Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull in context to the other three films and not understand how historically important the film is and what it does for narrative overall. It achieves so many things that so few movies get to show, and it's a tremendous film, right? So Henry Jones is there, and at this point, Indy is taking Henry Jones, his father, Henry Jones Sr., his father, out of this sacred place, and the whole place is coming down to ruins. And then Henry Jones Sr., who has dedicated his entire life, right, to the study of the Grail, he looks and he sees this knight, and the knight is looking at him dead in the eye, right? And and basically what's interesting is the knight is clearly saying, "Stay. I'm going to pick up that Grail. I'm going to dig through the ruins and get that Grail that's remaining in here, and I'm going to protect it for another millennium. But the reality is, my time has passed, and it needs a new guardian, right?" And so Henry Jones Sr. should have replaced the Knight of the Templar. This is very, very clear. If you watch the film, he really should have replaced him. And Indy makes the wrong choice. Indy pulls him out of this place so that they can share another 2, 3, 5 years together, right? But Henry Jones had spent his entire life, dedicated to the Grail, and he trades that for 5 years with his son. Now, since his son wanted, and here's the issue. It was totally okay for Henry Jones to not do this because his son wanted him to remain, right? So Henry made the right choice by putting his son's wishes over the wishes of the by putting his son's wishes over the Grail, right? Which he had learned that lesson. But here's the thing. Indiana Jones should have realized that his father's place was to replace the knight. Okay? It's super clear, and if you watch all 4 movies of Indiana Jones, I think you'll see this too. Henry Jones Sr. absolutely should have replaced the knight. It would have been a capstone on his life, and it was wrong for Indy to ask him to come live out in the regular world for 2, 3, 5 years, and for them to have a nice lunch a couple times, and then Henry Sr. Jr. dies, right? Rather than spending a millennium protecting the Grail, which would have been a much better end to his life, or actually, the final task of his life before he died. So where does this connect with Dungeons and Dragons? Well, here specifically, I think we need a change in the 2024 core rule books, and this change would go into the player's handbook. And what it would say is it would not change a single thing about death saves, but it would add one simple line. A player may choose to immediately fail any or all death saves immediately. A player can immediately choose to fail any or all death saves. And what this would mean is a player, when it comes to their first death saves, they can say, "I choose to fail all my death saves," and their player character immediately dies, right? Now, why would you do this? Well, it's really important, right? It means this is so, as humans, right? We struggle, we strive to survive, right? We strive to survive, okay? And no one can self-delete. It's wrong in every single circumstance. It is wrong in every single circumstance. I 100% believe that, right? However, a player character is different than an IRL human, okay? Not much. The difference is very subtle. The difference is key. It's just a few key differences that make an IRL human different from a player character. And there are things that, and at the end of the day, an IRL human is more valuable than any player character by a little bit, by a tiny, tiny bit, I think, right? But they are, But then, where you really, the difference is, it would not be a self-deletion, the way that's so horrific within our own world, but it would say, I'm going to accept a narrative end, which is fitting, right? And that's the point, is a player character, unlike an IRL human, right, is captive to the narrative, right? And this is the next progression of Dungeons & Dragons, in my opinion, is being able to choose a narrative ending, right? And having a mechanic that permissions it and allows it. Really, really critical. I really think this is the most important change we need in the 2024 core rulebooks. Every single word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion when you get into the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.